Hey everybody, what is going on? What is up? Welcome to another Paragon video. Epic has recently released a blog talking about the new map called Monolith. And with each part, this is part 2, they talk about a certain aspect of the map or design or really whatever about it. But the first blog was all about why they did it, right? They explained that they did it because some major changes were needed and so and such. But part 2, which is what this video is about, is talking about the asymmetrical design of the map. The fact that the map is the same no matter on which side you spawn. Right lane is always going to be right lane, and left lane is always going to be left lane for both teams. And this is really interesting and really cool, and it is really going to change a lot of things up. And they've called the right lane in particular, which is what they really cover a lot of in this part 2 blog, the safe lane. So in this video, I'm going to read to you what they said in the blog and just kind of discuss about it and give you guys my opinions. So they start off. Today we're talking about the safe lane in part 2 of our blog series. See, I was right. The road in Monolith. In part 1, we announced the new map we are working on, and they called it Monolith and the reasons why they were making it. And in part 2, we take a look at the safe lane, what it means and why it's important in a MOBA, as well as how we perceive it through the lens of Paragon. So yeah, like I said, this is going to be really interesting because a lot of other MOBAs don't actually use this asymmetrical map design, whereas Paragon for the longest time has not. And this is really going to change things up. The primary function of a safe lane is to act as a safe place for high economy scaling heroes, aka rangers, people like Murdoch, Twin Blast, all that, which they will refer to as carries, to set up shop in the laning early phase of a match. Carries can use the safe lane to ensure their success in the later phases of the game by safely building up their economic advantage, which basically means it's a safe place for your ranger or carry to farm themselves into a reasonable place once mid to late game comes around. They won't be feeling behind like they currently do in Agora, the map where junglers and fighters reign supreme and can seemingly farm and kill faster than carries as a whole, unless the carry gets a lot of kills early on. But with a safe lane like this and the gold buff, which I will talk about shortly, that may be a thing of the past. And they continue. In Paragon, we have heroes that fit comfortably into this mold. Heroes like Murdoch, Sparrow, Grim, and Twin Blast, rangers and carries. They scale very well with economy, but are relatively weak in the early stages of the game, meaning that they scale well, very well, when they are fed, but if they don't get fed, then you're kind of boned. Pairing these carries with a strong supporting hero in the early game currently can offset much of their early game weaknesses. In Monolith, the new map, a carry and support can team up to control the safe lane, and then together they form what we refer to as the safe lane duo. MOBAs handle the specifics of the safe lane in a variety of different ways, and we're excited to share how we've reimagined this idea in Paragon. All pretty exciting stuff so far. I mean, this map as a whole, Monolith, is going to completely change the way the Paragon plays. Not to the point where it's okay if we keep the current tank-heavy, armor, HP-heavy meta. I mean, that's going to need to go or change no matter what. And I don't know about you, but personally, I've needed this overhaul. I've needed this refresh for a while now. Things have not been good meta-wise, and I feel like this is just the kind of shake-up that we need. Their first topic is titled, "The Safe Lane is Safe," or rather, safer than the other positions on the map. Players should be able to identify the safe lane as a low-risk farming area that is more defensive than other lanes. Okay, the natural defensible position of this lane makes it easier to avoid aggressive rotations from the enemy team and allows for a greater focus on last hitting. Now, this doesn't mean that ganking the safe lane is impossible. It just means that it's going to be a little bit harder. And they continue with the gold buff. Well, that name isn't very good. That's them talking at me. We're working on it. Gold buff is a new objective for the safe lane that we feel meets our design goals of giving players more control over team economy. Regularly claiming the gold buff can ensure a strong economic advantage for the carry. The safe lane duo will also need to protect the gold buff from the oppressive offlaner. We'll talk about that role in a minute. And jungler, that one too, in order to keep it out of the hands of the enemy team. Placing a new high-value objective on the map has made for some exciting new gameplay that we can't wait for you to experience. This sounds all great to me, and if you look at the minimap at the top right of the screen that I have there, there's those little tiny gold circles towards the end of the lane on both sides. That's the gold buff. So I feel like that placement is really interesting, that you need to be playing your lane well and have pushed the enemy away or killed them outright in order to properly obtain that gold buff. It's going to be a very sought after position, and I can see a lot of team fights happening at the gold buff at pretty much any point of the game. If you and your support know that somebody's going after your lane's gold buff, yeah, I'd hightail it over there and I'd be like, hey mid, can you get over to gold buff? And oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. And Epic Games finishes up their blog post by saying, that concludes our quick overview of the safe lane. We're excited about how these new positions and roles are shaping up, and we've got more coming to you soon as we continue to roll out Monolith. Next week, we will take a look at the art and visual design of the map and where we see that going. So, actual screenshots and not just concept art, because that's going to be exciting. I can't wait. I bet it's going to look amazing. Now, if only we could get a resolution boost or some kind of boost to the PlayStation 4 version of the game without it dipping below 60 frames per second, because I think it's capable. I think the console itself is capable of at least a 1080p native image at 60 frames per second. But for me personally, that's a minor gripe. As long as it sticks to that 60 frames and it's rock solid, because right now there has been some hitching issues, and that'll need to be fixed because I have died to that before. But for the most part, this new map, Monolith, the gold buff, the safe lane, the middle lane, and it's kind of zigzagginess, and then the suicide lane where you send one person to die. No, I'm just kidding. They're not going to go there explicitly to die, but it'll be interesting to see the matchups, because I know that they're trying to reinforce this idea of 2 in the safe lane, 1 mid lane, 1 in the left lane, and then 1 in jungle. I feel like that's going to be the default format maybe for a while. But you could forego, I see with this new map, you could forego jungle altogether and have 2 on right, 2 on left, and 1 on mid. Or even 1 on left, 2 mid, and 2 right. Or 1, 1, and 3 with 3 on the right. And I could see a lot of those laning compositions working, because the jungle seems to be a lot closer than it did before. However, there will be a lot more verticality to it, so if you're playing a hero that doesn't have any movement abilities, then getting back into lane may be a little bit harder. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what it's like exactly before we make any assumptions on what may be popular in terms of laning composition. But one thing I do have to say about the gold buff, and this isn't something that they covered in the blog post, but have talked about before, or at least I've heard this from other people who have actually played Monolith. The gold buff is a kind of buff that you give to your carry, right? And it apparently, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it will apparently multiply the card points and experience that you get from last hits. And I can see this being a really good tool, because one, it will make you as the carry, or anybody who uses it, that much more dedicated to getting those last hits. And it'll train you to get last hits better, because it's so much more rewarding. And I'm really hoping it's not a huge multiplier that this gold buff gives. Otherwise, I could see the game being steamrolled over time. Say the enemy team gets your gold buff and gets their gold buff, and they've got 2 different people in 2 different lanes just farming away and just making your CXP rate look just pitifully slow. But that's just a guesstimation on my part. Let me know what you guys think about the gold buff, about the safe lane, down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on both the minimap that I showed you on screen, as well as the map itself and what it could promise. If you enjoy videos like this, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, then hit that subscribe button as well before you go, as I make videos like this every 1 to 2 days. Thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate your viewership, and I will catch you next time.